Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Network. Please note that with the exception of the discussion in today's breakout rooms, this session will be recorded and will be shared on the BSA's website as a resource following the conclusion of this meeting. So today's meeting content is the third in a series of topics covering the AIA's Guides for Equitable Practice. While each of these sessions that we've been delivering over the past couple of months are designed to stand alone as a topic, if you missed the first 3 sessions and are interested in learning more about them, you can find the recordings on the BSA's website on the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion resources page. So today we're going to be talking about compensation as a topic with regard to equity, diversity, inclusion. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about the guides themselves. And so for those of you who have joined us before, we'll just be doing an abridged introduction yet again to the Guides for Equity, Guides for Equitable Practice. Then we'll talk about the main topic here, compensation, and we'll spend a bit of time popping back and forth between some breakout rooms and the topic itself. We'll do a report out and then a wrap up to talk about other topics that are being presented by the BSA relative to EDI. So again, just by way of introduction, the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Network was formed in early 2020 to promote the fundamental values in our profession that are related to our code of ethics that need to be fostered through all of our organizations, our workplaces, and our communities. So at the BSA, we strive to cultivate a sense of safety and belonging for all individuals while creating an atmosphere of collaboration that cuts across demographic and hierarchical lines. So before I go any further, I just want to introduce the people that will be speaking today. So we have today Meg Gatza, who is, in addition to being one of the contributors to the BSA's Guides to Equitable Practice, she's also one of the co-chairs of the BSA's Administration and HR Network. We have Luis Rodriguez, who is going to be working with us in moderating some of the breakout rooms. We have Tony Ransom, who is the BSA EDI Network co-chair, Dan Riccadelli, and who is also a co-chair of this committee, and myself. So just as a way of introducing a little bit more about the guides that we're basing today's conversation on, the AIA's Guides for Equitable Practice were published in installments over the past 2 years. So they were designed in partnership with the University of Minnesota and the University of Washington to support the development and growth of a wide group of students, professionals, and leaders in the field of architecture and design. So there's 9 chapters, as you can see on the right here, and each topic begins with a baseline explanation, defines fundamental language and concept for each section, and then goes into research and best practice. So again, today we're going to be covering compensation, and you can see a summary of all of the information presented in those guides in the companion resource that we developed here at the BSA called the Equity and Practice Resource Guide. So these are summaries of that larger guide that are meant as an entry point. One of the things we heard from people was it was really hard to know where to start. So that guide is really a primer, and it has links to not only the AIA's Guide to Equitable Practice, but to lots of other resources developed by the BSA. So one of the other things that we want to highlight today are all of the resources that are provided by the BSA on their website. And I'm actually going to kick over to the BSA's website to ask you to take a couple minutes when you get a chance to scroll through, to look at all of the different resources that the BSA has compiled together. So you'll see a link to the Equity and Practice Resource Guide itself, other resources, scholarships, a link to the BSA's Race and Architecture series, which we'll be talking a little bit about at the end of this presentation as well. And one of the newest resources that we are actually just launching today, which is a compilation of firm examples of equity, diversity, and inclusion related policies and procedures We had quite a few firms from some of the leading firms in the city volunteer to basically open source their internal policies and procedures as resources for firms and individuals who are looking to learn more about how to incorporate some of the principles we're talking about into actual policy. So you'll see that these are grouped together in the same topics as we have our guides. And today, for example, as we're talking about compensation, you'd be able to click through and see, for example, specific policies related to compensation or to parental leave, just as an example. So let me head back here to our guide. The last thing I want to mention before I turn it over to Meg is just to, again, be mindful of the same principles that we like to remind people of as we start every one of our discussions. The most important one is to listen to be changed rather than to be reinforced. It's easy to hear points of view that align with your own, but it's harder to open yourself to listening to perspectives that are different. So we just ask that you keep that in mind as we talk through our compensation topic today. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Meg.
Thanks, Rachel. You want to go to the next slide for me? Compensation issues exist throughout our profession, arising from inequitable opportunities, valuation of work, and pay practices. Removing compensation gaps supports the influx, development, and retention of talent, and the economic stability and growth of individuals, firms, and the profession. Compensation is a big deal for a lot of people. Obviously, it's what we do for work. We get paid, we get compensated. That's how we live our lives. That's how our society works. So it's something that's really important to recognize the personal nature of compensation as a topic. I just want to remind you all again that the main sessions are all being recorded, but the breakout sessions will not be recorded. That's really important to keep in mind. Those are all confidential within the group that you're talking to. Just take that to heart as you listen to all of this, because it is a very personal topic. We'll be focusing on compensation as a means to show value for employees and our work. I'd like for us to keep in mind that we're brushing the surface of what goes into compensation, and we'll have a handful of shorter breakout sessions, and your breakout group should remain the same each time. Next slide, please. Pay parity versus pay equity. Pay parity legally is equal pay for equal work. Compensation packages of equal value between two comparable employees who do the same work. That's like you have two staff level designers, they're doing the exact same job, you're paying them the same. Pay equity, equal pay for work of equal value. Compensation packages of equal value between two employees who do different work, but it's the same value. So maybe you have an interior designer who's brand new to the profession and an architectural designer who's brand new to the profession. They're doing the same type of work, their jobs. Compensation discrimination is illegal, of course, but many companies have skirted that by valuing their employees' work unequally. A lack of transparency can also lead to misunderstanding how work is valued. The AIA guide points out within a single organization, compensation gaps occur due to inconsistent practices influenced by bias and discrimination and exacerbated by lack of transparency. Only 13% of businesses, I don't know if this is nationwide or internationally, 13% of businesses with under 1,000 employees are transparent with their employees about pay policies. So having a policy is really important so that you can recognize these types of parity. Next slide, please. There's three types of compensation. Direct financial compensation, money paid directly to employees, hourly pay, salary, overtime, bonuses. Indirect financial compensation has financial value, but is not paid monetarily. That's paid time off, paid family and medical leave, health insurance, disability insurance, life insurance, retirement contributions, pensions, stock options, etc., employee services, perks, that sort of thing. It's things that the company usually pays for on behalf of the employee. The more interesting one is the non-financial compensation, non-monetary for career building and increasing job satisfaction. So opportunities such as project assignments, promotions, increased decision-making and leadership responsibilities, mentorship and sponsorship, training, recognition through praise and awards, time with leaders, networking, introductions, recommendations, quality of experience through workspace upgrades, more desirable tasks, flexibility, and positive social exchange. So while financial compensation may be a reason an employee chooses to accept a job at a company, Non-financial compensation contributes to a firm culture and deeply affects overall employee satisfaction. Next slide. That one, thanks. The aggregate pay scale. So this is just an example. I want to focus more on non-financial compensation for the rest of our conversation. It's important to understand the tools available to analyze financial compensation, such as salaries. This is an aggregate pay scale taken from the 2019 AIA compensation data for a variety of firm sizes, net revenues, and regions. This is not like a copy out of a page from the actual compensation guide, and that's important to know. It's published biannually, and it's helpful to look at each of the data sets when considering base pay. For example, when we analyze our salaries at Brunner Cott, we look at the number of our number of people in a firm, the number of the region that we're in, the city that we're in, the net revenue that we have, and we do an aggregate scale to make sure that we're capturing all that information. And the guide also has it has lists of the positions. So the positions listed here may not match what you call your employees. You may not have senior project designers, but you may have an associate who does the same type of task. All right, next slide. I'm ready for the first breakout session.
So I'll be running the breakout sessions. Thanks, Meg. So the way we're going to structure the breakout sessions today are we're going to do 3 pretty short breakout sessions. So the first one is really get to know each other. So we'll be putting you in the same group for each of the 3 breakout sessions. And so this one we're going to do like 3 minutes. And the idea is just to introduce yourself, where you work, and say what type of non-financial compensation is important to you, just as a sort of icebreaker to start the discussion. So I'll be booting everyone to a breakout session now. If you have any trouble, you can hit the call a host button, and I will come in and help you. I guess to those of you just joining, we're just in breakout rooms right now, but we're coming back to the larger group. So.
Thank you.
Hi. You just missed a breakout, Vanessa.
Okay.
Sorry, that's the challenge of coming timing here. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We'll just give 10 more seconds to everyone joining back into the larger group.
Economic transparency.
Okay, so I'll ask everyone to remute yourself. I'll hand it back over to Meg, but thank you for getting the juices flowing, introducing yourself, and we'll do 2 more smaller breakout sessions similar to that with the same groups.
So obviously one of the things as you're looking at compensation in your firm, you have to evaluate based on, I've got 5 different things to evaluate based on. The first 3 are compliance, transparency, and fairness. Compliance, do you comply with pay equity laws? That's pretty important. Make sure you're not breaking the law when you're evaluating your firm's compensation practice. Are you respecting personal privacy as a firm and as employees? And the level of transparency that you want to have with your employees and what they feel comfortable sharing with each other, there's some flexibility within that. Is discrimination prevented and remediated without retaliation? So if someone comes to you and says, I have a problem with my pay, are you still treating them fairly? Are you listening to them? Are you not firing them because they say they're underpaid? Transparency. Do the employees understand the compensation system and their placement within it? Are job descriptions clear? Are there clear criteria for pay ranges, performance pay, and advancement? Is pay adjusted through regular audits? Do leaders openly share how the compensation program relates to the business? Does the compensation system align with the values and goals of the business? And then fairness. Do you value performance over hours and determine the fee structures accordingly? Do you have a process for determining wages that is free from bias? Is your firm's performance review process objective and fairly administered? Are employees assessed on the value of their work and not necessarily the hours they spend in their seats? Do all employees have equitable opportunity for high profile assignments, network, and clients? Next slide, please. And then the other 2 things to assess by are power and connections. So the power is who determines compensation in your workspace. Is there consensus in leadership on how compensation practices relate to the organization's business goals? Who benefits from the compensation system and who suffers? And do the firm's and employees' values around compensation align? Connections. Do economic pressures such as lower fees to secure work or to provide employee benefits have disparate impact on compensation on certain employees rather than other employees? Are your pay and other benefits perceived as fair when employees compare them to those of other similar organizations? And is this helping or hurting your equity goals? Next slide. And we're on to our next breakout group, Dan.
Yes, thanks, Meg. So I'll take over again. So the 2 prompts we would like you to consider, and I'll put them in the chat as well, as how transparent is your firm's compensation system? And is it clear to progress or advance within that system? And what more would you want to understand as an employee and as a firm leader? So you can use your judgment on which position you fit. So I will redistribute everyone into the same breakout rooms now that we've introduced ourselves, and I'll put these questions in the chat. And so we'll have about 10 minutes to discuss this, and I'll call everyone back to the larger group. Hi, Rima. Welcome back to everyone. I'm just going to remind everyone to mute themselves as they come back into the larger room. We'll just give everyone another 20 seconds to get back here.
Yeah, this is just all breakout room 1 so far back here.
I just got one team.
We're very prompt. Thank you very much.
Good job, guys. Okay, thank you everyone for participating. I'm just going to remind everyone to mute themselves as they get back into the larger group here. And I'll hand it back over to Meg to do the next topic.
All right. One of the main features of the AIA equity guides in all the sections is how do we act moving forward? Because what good is it to have a whole bunch of policies and not be able to make change? So how can we act as individuals, as firms, and as a profession? For individuals, especially employees learning about, thank you. Individuals, especially those who are learning to navigate compensation, learn about the broad and complex issues in compensation, know the range of pay expected for an employee at your level, size of firm, and location, track your own performance and development, learn to pinpoint and articulate your value relative to your organization's goals. As a firm, make sure you review salary data from reputable sources, assess your firm's current compensation system, considering structures and policies connected to the staffing levels that constitute your compensation in your organization. And as a profession, this is obviously a little tricky because it's very hard for each of us to contribute to it, but the profession should be establishing guidelines for equal value, understanding what values people are, and not, valuing some work over other types of work, and allowing, hopefully the guide is even a little bit hopeful moving forward for the future of being able to have better fees for architects, for example, but that's also client dependent. So, all right, next slide. So just the guides have a lot of quotes scattered throughout, and these were two that I thought were really important to consider in terms of non-financial compensation and financial compensation. So I'm just going to read them. There are a lot of other careers that have better work-life balance and higher pay. These things are just essential until they're addressed, until real systemic change is realized. I'm worried about the profession and our ability to be more diverse. So that's a person who felt like when we don't address some of these issues of flexibility and pay, that we're not going to attract people. We're looking to attract more minorities to our industry and retain them. We're not going to do that if we don't pay people well. Architects aren't taught to look at things from a business standpoint. When we make the decision to be with their kids, we're not taught about loss of future benefits. They don't play out the scenario of staying in the workforce and advancing their career and getting to a place maybe later in life when they can spend more time with their kids when they're more comfortable. So they give their kids different types of experiences. The decision is very much about the present day. I can only make as much money as I need to pay for childcare, so I'm going to stay home. And I've heard that from a number of different people, personally and professionally, that people make the decision to leave the workforce temporarily to take care of kids instead of advancing their careers. And some of that is on firms for not allowing flexibility to allow people to take care of each other. Next slide. And we are on to our last breakout session.
Thanks, Meg. Okay, so this will be our last breakout group. Hopefully you're all comfortable with your breakout session. So I'll put you in the rooms and I'll put the questions in the chat again. And then after this session, we'll come back as a larger group and discuss what you all talked about in your breakout group. So if you want to designate someone to speak, or if you all feel comfortable just jumping in, that would be great. Okay, sending you off now. Welcome back, everyone. Just a reminder to mute yourself as you come back into the larger room. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Saved by the bell.
That was the last of the 3 breakout sessions. I know it was ruthless with the time, but I'm gonna hand it over to Luis, who will do a little report back session. And I just want to remind everyone, as Meg said at the beginning, that the breakout sessions were not recorded, but this larger group session will be recorded and posted to the BSA website.
Hi, everyone. So what were the most common forms of non-financial compensation? And I found it interesting that being able to learn new things was one thing that came up. Work-life balance seems to be sort of at the centerfold of a lot of people's experience. Flex work arrangement. Obviously, a lot of us right now are working remotely telecommuting. And long-term, short-term disability insurance is important to some folks, and as well as cultural opportunities within their firm. So those are a couple of things that were highlighted. If anybody feels free and would like to share or bring anything up that might have not been covered or talked about, please feel free to do so.
This is Tony Reyes. I think it was breakout group 3. I think what really jumped to the fore is that people are looking for various opportunities to do interesting work, but also recognition of what they've done for the firm. Verbal recognition definitely always jumped out as something people would like to at least see or hear.
Hey, Tony, was that just verbal recognition, or did the people want financial or other kinds of recognition too? Did you guys discuss that?
Well, we were talking about non-financial compensation.
I'm sure they would appreciate the financial part as well.
Always.
And then moving on, was there general transparency or lack of transparency in the pay structure? One sentiment that was shared was pay raises sometimes are not based on their review, the annually review, but rather on their experience or sort of pay adjustments as it relates to living conditions. Sorting personnel within roles and projects based on experience. Sometimes you might have a scenario where you might have 2 individuals within the same role, but one individual might have more years of experience, and then also kind of navigating how that pay structure might look like within their firm.
A question.
Go ahead.
When we talk about, I came in a little bit later, so when we talk about pay structure, we're not talking about fee structure, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So a pay structure would be based on the levels. Like, let's say you have 5 different levels in your firm. There's like designer 1, designer 2, architect 1, architect 2, and associate. The pay structure would be which levels receive what kind of financial compensation. So, designer 1 is going to make X dollars, designer 2 is going to make Y dollars, the architect's going to make a certain amount of money.
So I think, discussing the fee structure will be, very helpful. What's your multiplier for each one of those rates? I think that's a big part that I have observed, that once you have that information in front of you, people understand what might be your appetite on the context for your salary as well.
I'll just add too that one of the things that we talked about was this difference between practice and policy. So there might be some people, some firms that have a compensation practice in terms of, when raises are every year, roughly what they're based on, but it may not be codified into a specific policy versus the transparency that comes with actually having that written down, and that it can be something that you continue to evolve over time. But where does the line between having a practice that you follow versus needing a formal policy?
And then lastly, what additional resources have your firms developed to analyze and maintain fair pay?
Does anyone have anything they'd want to share on this topic?
I'll just say that data is your friend here. Make sure you're looking at all the data you can get before you make decisions about how you compensate people.
Hey, my name is Dan. Sorry to jump in late here. I work at Payette, and we recently, over the past year or so, applied for something called the Just label, which is a sort of label you can get through. It's actually through the sort of Living Future Institute that does Living Building Challenge and stuff. And that's a process that I think sort of the firm gets to celebrate from a kind of corporate perspective. But in order to do it, they kind of have to, it forces them to mine the data a little bit and really look through the records and find some information. And then you get a bit of a report card. And so the firm went through that process and was able to kind of get that report card. And then having done that, it helped the firm start a series of internal conversations about compensation. And they were able to put out data, which actually, it's amazing. Sometimes the transparency unearths nice things rather than the sort of horrific things that we might expect. So the Just JUST label was a nice thing that my firm did.
Great, thank you. I think that there are a few folks on the call. We heard about the Just label in a couple of the different rooms, and if I can find the chat button, I think because I'm sharing my screen, I can't do it, but we can certainly add the Just label web link for those people who are interested in the chat function. That's a great point. All right. Anything else, Luis, before we move on to the next slide?
No.
Okay, great.
Move on to the next slide.
Great.
So we're going to recap. If a firm leader analyzes your firm pay scale, if you are a staff member, ask for transparency in pay scales. Obviously, we have had an opportunity to talk amongst breakout groups about pay scale structure and transparency within your firm. Ensure compliance compared to local statistics using AIA compensation reports and other resources. Again, to kind of piggyback on what Meg had highlighted, go on the BSA website and look at some of the resources available. And clarify paths for advancement in pay. Be consistent. This is Dan. Recap, what did we discover? What do we consider next? For firms, based on your organization goals, do we have a transparent compensation philosophy, structure, and policy that has been conveyed to our staff? For individuals, are you able to pinpoint and articulate your value relative to your organizational goals? again, kind of going back to the previous conversations that we had in our small breakout groups. I know some people had taken notes and maybe perhaps having conversations with either your reporting supervisors or office managers about certain access and transparency within the pay structures, and also how you could advance into other positions.
Yes.
As you
I
grow.
think, yeah, I think that in our groups, this really was pointed out, as I said, for firms, I think a lot of the firms really should consider how transparent their compensation philosophies are. A lot of people seem to not be very cognizant of what those points were. And I think it would be very useful for the staff to have that so they can feel comfortable where they stand with their firms, and that also their firms value their participation in what they are doing to help the firm grow. And I think if people are really able to see that, they'll have a comfort level within their firm that they will grow just as the firm grows. Okay. And in line with what we're doing at EDI, there are several events that we like to keep in front of people's minds. First one is the Race and Architecture series that the BSA has. Their next event is on the 27th, Design Education, Pipelines, Pathways, Pedagogies, and Profession. Basically, I guess through an examination of legacies of systematic racism, from pedagogy to practice, they will be trying to identify opportunities to reconsider architectural education. Basically, the idea is to widen the pipeline of aspiring architects, which will include more racial and gender diversity. That will be the basis of this discussion. It will be hosted by the president of the BSA, Natasha Espada, and the vice president and president-elect for 2021, Greg Minot. Also, BOSNOMA, the Boston chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects, will be having its monthly meeting, which is typically the last Tuesday of the month. That'll be next Tuesday at 6. If you go to BOSNOMA at Gmail, you will be signed up, and they'll include you and the people getting the Zoom link for that meeting. We hope that you will attend. Our next meeting, the EDI Network, will be on the 18th of November, and we will be discussing recruitment and retention. We hope that you will also join us for that. Thank you very much for your attendance and participation. We will, I think, all learned a bit about the work that we still have to do to better our professions. Thank you for your attendance and to help us rethink how we approach this profession. Any comments from my other co-chairs?
Nope, thanks. And again, if anyone has any interest in following up on this topic or on the new firm policies resource, please feel free to reach out to any of us listed. And I also want to thank Meg and Luis for participating today. Again, as you look at the schedule of topics that we have scheduled coming up, and there's anything that particularly speaks to you, don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to include more people from the network in the exploration of all of these topics. So thank you. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
All right, take care.
Bye, everyone.